We'll get started a couple minutes early here. What is up? Thank you for stopping by. It has been far too long. It's been, I think, exactly a month since I've gone live on the channel here. I don't think my face has been on the channel more than a few times in that span. So thanks for stopping by. Welcome to the live stream. If you're watching this on replay, stick around. I'm not going to waste too much time dilly-dallying around before we get into the meat of the content tonight, which is talking about the season-to-date leaders in the Minnesota Twins minor league system. So we do, a lot of work on this channel is done focusing on the day-to-day grind of the Twins and their minor league affiliates. So the big picture, I don't always get to talk about that stuff. I try to mix that in and talk about how guys are doing, but let's get into the nitty-gritty on how guys are doing throughout the season. I should mention as well, my name's Tom Froming. How's it going? There's probably people watching this who haven't gotten a chance to interact with me at all or jumped into any of these live streams. So got to keep that in mind. Let me bring up the chat here. One moment. There we are. So if you're in here, feel free to throw a message out in the chat. Everybody's going to see it on the screen here, and I'll get to as many of those as I can as we're going. But again, the topic tonight is going to be the minor league leaders across the system. I'm already seeing some folks show up. Thanks for stopping by. But I want to say first, I'm doing a bit of an experiment this week on the nightly recaps, on the system recaps, and trying a bit of a different format. And, I'm going to ask for feedback on that. I really appreciate everybody that responded last night. And it was just so very nice to see all the responses. Not that it was all positive on this new format that I was trying out. I'm going to kind of be playing around with the rest of this week. No, I think most people liked the format I was doing before better, which was not surprising to me. But everybody was so nice about it. And I appreciate that. I feel very fortunate to have such a great community here on YouTube. You guys are all so supportive and so many kind words. We'll talk a little bit about that more later. But I do want to get into our topic. So again, a lot of the people on replay who aren't able to join live want to jump right into this. So hello, Edric. How's it going? Thanks for stopping by. Let me pull up Fangraphs here. There we go. And I'll show you where you can find this information. It's really handy. It's a tool that I'm not sure a lot of people know about either on Fangraphs, but you can see here, I'm, just right on their homepage. And if you go under the prospects tab, I think you can click on either of these first two, but we'll just click on the very first one, which is the board, which is basically their prospect list. But if you click on this area over here, MILB leaderboards, stats only, you get just a crazy amount of options in which you can sort by and filter things by. So of course, we only care about the Twins here. maybe we'll look at, you can look at, who are the league leaders among all affiliated minor leaguers. Actually, we should do this. Let's start here. I lied. Proof that I have no script on these live streams. We're just going to jump right into things and go crazy. Because I'm pretty sure Emmanuel Rodriguez, yeah. So this is all of minor league baseball. All minor league baseball. Every level, every team, every affiliate. The qualified leaders. This is a sample of 833 hitters. Let me get this out of the way so my head's not there. 833 results. That might be a little small on your screen, but Emmanuel Rodriguez, who's a 19-year-old, is leading all of minor league baseball in walk percentage, 28.8%. He hit a home run tonight. We're not going to really discuss what's going on tonight or the Twins game earlier today because I am still going to put out a recap this evening. So we'll kind of save that for this evening. But how insane is that Emmanuel Rodriguez is number one in all of baseball in the minor leagues in walk percentage. And gosh, he's going to be way up there. Yeah, he is 13th in weighted runs created plus. Just on an absolute tear. Again, he hit a home run tonight that I'll be able to share. Fort Myers is playing Bradenton, who has broadcasts available. So that's really a nice treat. So we filter this down, though, to the Twins. and take a look and discuss some of the system leaders. All right. So again, we are just looking at the Twins. And as you see here on this, we have 31 players in the Twins system who have enough plate appearances to qualify. And let's see, do I want to look at it? Yeah, let's walk through some of these. So you can see home runs. I'll make this a little bigger. Let's do that. There we go. I think you can probably see that a little better. Oh, now we really did it. There we go. It's a bit of an adventure when you're making your screen bigger. All right, so Spencer Steer, who just got promoted from AA Wichita up to St. Paul, leading the system with 8 home runs, tied with Christian Encarnacion Strand, who, of course, was just such a great start. Matt Wallner, pretty much the opposite situation. He had a horrible start, has been on fire of late. So those guys are the leaders in home runs. A lot of this other stuff I want to look at the percentages on, but stolen bases, Austin Martin. If you're watching the channel a lot, that's probably no surprise. He's leading the system in steals with 18. I'd like to see that power show up some more for him, but nothing wrong with getting on base and stealing bags. 18 for 22 is an insanely high success rate for stolen bases. Mikey Perez, who's with Fort Myers, is 14 of 16 himself. And Deshaun Kersey, who's in AA, is 12 for 13. So not only are these top guys stealing a lot of bases, these are great success rates. Even Royce Lewis, 10 for 12. That's outstanding. Emmanuel Rodriguez getting thrown out a few times, but it's good to see him running. Noah Miller, 10 for 11. So lots of successful base stealers there. And then batting average, Encarnacion Strand, Royce Lewis, and Spencer Steer are among the leaders. I always feel bad. You can't fit Christian Encarnacion Strand's last name when I zoom it in like that. Buzzkill. We'll probably see that with Simeon Woods Richardson too. There's some guys, not sure how they're going to fit these names on the back of these jerseys for some of these guys. All right. So again, just we're moving on forward, taking a look at a little bit more of the percentages, a little bit more of, I guess, kind of the more advanced stuff. I already mentioned that Emmanuel Rodriguez leads all of affiliated minor league baseball in walk percentage. So, of course, he's tops here by quite a bit. I mean, that'll tell you how insane he's doing at drawing walks. He's over 10% higher than anybody else. And how insane is it that Noah Miller is the second place guy, and he's also 19 years old? So the top 2 guys in walk percentage, that's usually thought of as, something you develop maybe a little bit later on, something you're working on when you're younger, when you're a teenager, for Christ's sake. And Emmanuel Rodriguez and Noah Miller are 1-2. 1-2. Just insanity that those guys are drawing so many walks. And, a 484 OBP for Rodriguez and a 416 for Miller. That's just crazy. Some other guys, Andrew Bechtold, who's a guy who's been catching some more this year. Very interesting. He was drafted as a third baseman. Still is playing some third and some first. I would also catching and kind of proving to be an interesting bat. So he's certainly a name to know, but that it's going to be interesting to see how his development goes, because he has a long way to go as a catcher, as you'd imagine. Somebody who, at age 26 season is kind of first time really catching regularly. Interesting. And then Matt Wallner, a guy I mentioned already among the home run leaders, strikes out a ton, but he's kind of balancing that up with a really high walk rate. This is great to see. Royce Lewis with a 13.8 walk rate, very strong, also in the top 10 in the system here. And we'll look at the good side of the strikeouts first. Austin Martin, I think this is kind of the player that maybe he's going to be, is what we're seeing out of Austin Martin. There's a lot of, the prospect projections, kind of people think that he could be a 20 home run guy someday. I think if he changes his approach, maybe that's possible, but maybe this is just kind of the guy who he's going to be. Low strikeout, guy who draws walks, gets on base, steals bases. It's yet to be seen, but that's certainly how he's been playing this year, certainly how he played last year. But so these are the lowest strikeout guys. Nice to see that Spencer Steer, who's tied for the organizational lead in home runs, is second with the lowest K percentage. See that among power hitters. We flip this around and we'll see Matt Wallner very high. Kalai Rosario, who's kind of a free swinging power guy down in Fort Myers, very high. Keone Cavaco, unfortunately, very high. He hit a grand slam tonight, though, that I'll show in the system recap later. So you see, a lot of guys strike much too much. Aaron Sabato, unfortunately, still striking out over 30% of the time in high A. That's not great to see. Moving on down, we already looked at batting average, OBP, of course. Rodriguez and Miller, since their walk rates are so high, they have such a high OBPs. But Royce Lewis, 415, third in AAA. Can't say enough positive things about what Royce Lewis has done this year. It's kind of unfortunate, all the talk of him getting sent back down and kind of all the negativity that went toward that. I feel like it's almost kind of overshadowed how amazing his year has been and how amazing his story has been so far. But Kyler Fedko has started the year in Fort Myers, moved up to Cedar Rapids recently, is in the top 5. And Alex Isola, who's a guy who catches and also plays a bunch of other positions. They have quite a few guys that are trying to work into the catching rotation in AA. So he's playing some other positions, but he's never really shown a ton of offensive potential. And look at this line from him: 303, 88, 485, 873 OPS. So he's certainly someone to keep an eye on this year, especially Alex Isola. Moving on over to slugging percentage, of course, Steer among the home run leaders and Encarnacion Strand, they're going to be high. Royce is going to pop up in pretty much anything positive. Mikey Perez, again, 22 years old, and Fort Myers is having a really good year. He was the guy who was very high in the stolen bases we just looked at. But other than that, a lot of these guys are going to be popping up on the same numbers. Obviously, if you're hitting well, you're going to be hitting well across the board, certainly. We'll take a look at the bad side here, since we've been focusing on the good side, and it's just kind of looking like the Twins are not going to have a great, 2020 draft, right? The COVID season with Aaron Sabato, their first round pick, and Aleric Solari, their second round pick. I mean, both of these guys have certainly shown some good things. But they're 23 and 20 in high A. You'd really like to see better production, certainly. And if there wasn't better production, the 30 plus K percentage of both those guys is pretty concerning. You never want to give up on somebody, never say never, but it's not good. It's not good. And it's easier to sort of hold out hope on like a Keone Cavaco, who's a bit younger and was considered a little bit more raw when he was drafted than it is, an Aaron Sabato. But, I want to give the whole picture of what's going on. So I figured we sort of look at the flip side as well. Let's see. Oh, pardon me. And then WRC plus. You don't really, if you're not familiar with this stat, you don't need to know a ton about it. Basically, 100 is league average. And it is both, it's weighted in terms of run scoring environment. So your level and your league. So if you hit in a league where offense is not really hard to come by, and maybe your home park doesn't have a lot of run scoring, this adjusts for that. And this is a great example. You can see here where we have this sorted by weighted runs created plus, and it goes Rodriguez, Encarnacion Strand, Lewis, Fedko, Perez. And kind of an interesting thing I just want to point out in looking at this, it kind of helps us contextualize these OPSs based off of the levels, the hitting environments. And you see here that Noah Miller has a higher WRC plus than Spencer Steer does, despite having a way lower OPS. Noah Miller at 801 and Steer's at 967. Well, it's because the Florida State League the runs are really suppressed. Offense is very low in the Florida State League. So that is how that kind of works out. It kind of adjusts for that. So Noah Miller, and Emmanuel Rodriguez, can't say enough positive things about both of these guys. But Rodriguez kind of steals the thunder. That Noah Miller has also been excellent. He looked great. He got a lot of time, surprisingly, with the Twins, the big club in spring training, and looked outstanding, considering all things. So very exciting to see here. Before we get into the pitching, I'm going to take a little break. Again, I like to keep these moving. I like to make sure we're keeping up pace, and especially for people who are watching on replay, that this isn't not any replay value for them. I do want to make sure to not completely neglect the chat here. So I'm going to take a look through some of these. Twins need to make sense. I mean, they just won. I mean, they lost today, and they had a lot of balls not fall in, but after a 6-game winning streak, where a lot of hits were falling in, they were not hard hit. I think we can't complain too much there. Although today was a bit weird. Thoughts on the Paddock trade? I said at the time I said it was a trade that I would do, but it was, a kind of tough pill to swallow. And I understood a lot of people not liking that trade, not liking the timing of the trade, not liking the scope of that trade, because it was a bit more of a pushing out trade than it was like a building for 2020, like going for it in 2022 trade. And obviously that's only gotten worse, with Chris Paddock, unfortunately undergoing Tommy John surgery. I'm glad you brought this up because I wanted to do a video on this and just discuss Paddock and the situation in general. Just didn't get around to it. But it's unfortunate, but still getting a big league starting pitcher who had 3 years of team control, and Emilio Pagan, who is not as good as Taylor Rogers, but also a legitimate, big league established reliever who has 2 years of team control and a prospect in addition to that. Now, I know there's some other, it was a weird trade, because Brent Rooker also went to San Diego. The Twins also paid Taylor Rogers' salary. There might even be some things, honestly, I'm missing about that one. There was just so much going on, and it happened the day before the season opened. So it was like I had less time to digest that than a lot of the other offseason moves. There's certainly still an avenue for the Twins to win that trade because they have so much more length in that deal. They're still going to get Paddock for like another year and a half, probably. Am I thinking about it right? Something like that. And, Pagan, again, Pagan, I understand if people are negative on Pagan. He gave up, I think he got the loss today, right? He's just generally hard to watch. He's been hard to watch for the Twins. I think he's got like a 2.3 ERA. So it's not like he's been horrible in terms of, doing his job, taking care of business. But certainly you'd rather have Taylor Rogers. And there was something that I said earlier in the offseason. Hey, Garrett, thanks for stopping by. There's something I said earlier in the offseason before a lot of I think it was the time the Yankee trade was made, was that once everything was all said and done, we might not feel like the Twins got necessarily a lot better, but we might not feel like they necessarily got a lot worse, but they got a lot different. And that was something you can really apply to that trade. It's really easy to say on one side or the other, whether you liked it or not. It was kind of a mix it up. I do think it's very unlikely Taylor Rogers was going to be with the Twins beyond this year. Now, whether or not that's right or wrong is, whatever your opinion is, I'm okay with not spending on bullpen guys. That doesn't bother me at all if they don't want to give big contracts for relievers. They don't work out well a lot of the time. So unfortunate that Paddock's elbow exploded and he's having Tommy John now. It certainly, when we look at it today, it looks like it sucks. But the book is still very much open on that deal. All right. And thanks for everybody for stopping by. If you have any questions in the chat. Trading Sano, you can't trade Sano. Even when he comes back healthy, he has negative trade value. No one's going to want Miguel Sano. You'd have to pay somebody to take him off your hands and package him with a prospect probably. So it's like, why not just trade a prospect for more? Like he's going to hurt the value of any trade package you build. What's going to happen when he gets back? I don't know. I'm not really ready to inspect that yet, but there's a 0% chance I'll say that Miguel Sano gets traded. I would say at this point. Our pitching tree, we'll kind of hold on to this for a minute because we're going to, when do I think, I'll touch on Sabato. Never. I mean, right now, when do I think Sabato gets I think that's Aaron Sabato you're asking for, gets a peek at the majors? Never. I would say right now. If you're asking me right now when I think Aaron Sabato is going to make it to the major leagues, I'd say he's not going to. Now, that's not like a complete death sentence on his entire career. He really looked good at the end of last year, but we're already, How many plate appearances does he have here where he's not producing? Let me get back in here. Doesn't matter that much. It's not a lot. It's enough to be still be concerned. Excuse me. It's almost 150. So I'm not saying it can't happen. He's hitting 190 with a 302 on base percentage and 317 slugging in high A as a 23-year-old. That's not good. So I think we can kind of take him out of mind. As far as we'll get into that more. And part of why I'm doing this too is I'm kind of brushing up on these guys because I'm working on an updated prospect list, which I'm hoping to share either sometime a little bit before the end of the month. Obviously, we're running out of time here, or in early June. So sometime soon, I should have an updated prospect list to share. How long does the COVID IL go? I think it just lasts as long as the guy is testing. I don't think there's a limit on that. It can be as short or as long as it needs to be. I'm guessing you're wondering about Joe Ryan, who's placed on the COVID IL today. But, I think we saw with like Arise and Bundy, they weren't out for too long. Some other guys have been out for a while on other teams for quite a while. It just kind of depends. When will Chris Archer get his first win? I mean, he'd have to throw more than 5 innings, or he'd have to throw at least 5 innings. So they've been keeping Archer really suppressed on his innings, only throwing 4 innings at a time pretty much, leaving some wiggle room, but that's kind of going to limit Archer's ability to pick up W's. Pardon me, that's my alarm going off. Was wondering your thoughts on Nick Gordon. Had a good start, but has really been struggling. Can't Royce get his reps? The thing with Nick Gordon is when everybody's healthy, there's not reps to go around for Nick Gordon. He's not going to be playing very much when most everybody's healthy, at least. We'll put it that way. Like now that Trevor Larnach's back, I don't see Nick Gordon playing as nearly as much as he was. I think Alex Kirilloff's going to be back before too long, and that will factor into Gordon's playing time in some manner. Kirilloff will play some left. Kirilloff will DH. Kirilloff will play first with Arise maybe playing a bit more second on the days that Polanco gets off. So kind of once that bigger picture's in, Gordon's not going to have a lot of playing time. And that's the thing about Royce Lewis is you want to playing him every day. So I can see where you're thinking right now, or since Royce has been sent down, like, wait, they can find room for Nick Gordon, but they can't find room for Royce Lewis. To me, Nick Gordon is not a guy. He's a bench guy. He's just a bench guy. He's out of options, so you can't send him down to the minor leagues without subjecting him to waivers. And you're not that concerned about his development anymore, because it's not like you're trying to develop him into like a star player like you are with Royce Lewis. Nick Gordon, he's a nice bench player. He does a lot of things well to chip in, but he's never going to be a guy who's going to be taking an everyday role for like a planned long-term thing on your team, which Royce Lewis should be. So that's kind of my interpretation on Nick Gordon. He's a great guy to just have on the bench. It's kind of like Kyle Garlick. Think of it that way. He's not going to be playing every day. He's a nice platoon guy. And he's nice to have on the bench because you're not worried about getting him everyday regular at bats. You don't want anybody on the bench, like not starting on a very regular basis, who you want playing. So, but I get it. A lot of people kind of confused at why they would keep Gordon around. They can't send Gordon down. They can send Royce down. They can send other guys down. If you send Gordon down, I would think some other team is going to claim him. Just his position flexibility is very handy. We've seen it with the Twins, even though again, he's not like some kind of huge contributor, but he's just a valuable guy to have around. Do I think Noah Miller would get promoted? I could see like at the very end of the year, possibly, but he's 19 and in full season ball. He's very young for his level already. I don't know. It kind of depends on what happens. Like, let's say the Twins do find a way to get Royce Lewis on the big club, and obviously they're trying to open up avenues for him playing third, left field a little bit. So that I think that is the plan. So obviously if Royce all of a sudden is up with the Twins full time, that creates the opportunity for Austin Martin to move up. It's a domino effect. So Noah Miller could be, at the end of the day, the guy that kind of gets moved up to Cedar Rapids when either somebody there gets released or just other guys at the position move up. I think the Twins are really high on him. I think the fact that he played so much in spring training with the major league club was really telling. And he's obviously been incredible for Fort Myers, really good. So, yeah, I could see it happening. But it wouldn't be that weird if they left him on Fort Myers for basically the whole year because he's just so young. Do I think Cantorino will stay a starter? I think, gosh, if you made me bet on it, I would bet that he ends up being a reliever in the major leagues. Not that I don't think he can make it as a starter. I just think it's going to kind of be like Yohan Duran in that it'll just kind of make more sense. Duran, we've seen it. He's got 3 legit pitches. Absolutely. I think he could, he has the repertoire to be a starter, but the innings have not been there for him to keep him on a starter's track. Duran, you'd probably have to have him he'd be in the minors right now, starting and kind of building up innings. And this year would be like, let's get him to 100 innings or something like that. And then next year, potentially you'd be talking about Duran pitching in the big club and maybe, being a rotation piece potentially. And even that wouldn't be a guarantee. Maybe he gets hurt again. So I think that kind of innings accounting, we'll call it, is going to come into play eventually with Cantorino. We're going to talk about, he's going to show up when we talk about the pitching real quick here. But he's pitching well. He's healthy. He's taking the ball every, 6th day or whatever, and pitching well. So, I'm not trying to say that I don't think that Cantorino can be a starting pitcher or that he's not going to make it as a starter, or that I would necessarily evaluate him as just a bullpen guy. But I think given kind of his situation, given kind of the Twins situation, I think it's more than likely he will be a reliever when he makes it to the Twins. And I think, even though that's going to be kind of a bummer, you'd rather have a rotation piece than a reliever piece. I think he's really personality-wise well-suited for the bullpen too. He's kind of a quirky guy. He's a high-energy guy. I think he could have a lot of fun if you were just like, Matt, throw your nastiest stuff for an inning or two. Just put it all out there for an inning or two. Don't worry about, saving certain pitches for later in the game or whatever. Just go nuts out there for a while. I think he would have the best time. I think he'd have so much fun. Trevor May talked quite a bit about that transition from going from a starter to a reliever and how he really didn't like it at first and he did not want to be relieving. But by, basically the end of his Twins tenure, he was like, this is actually what I was supposed to be doing the whole time. That my personality suits this a lot better. So I think there's kind of a win-win there with Cantorino. And again, we'll take a look at the pitching here soon. But again, thoughts on Balazovic. We'll talk about him here in just a sec too. Actually, let's transition to that right now. Thanks for all those comments and questions. Getting into a lot of topics that I haven't really been able to touch on much. That's kind of, we'll talk about the new format, messing around with that. That's kind of a part of the motivation to mess around with some stuff is I haven't been able to get around to other stuff as much as I'd want to. So again, we're looking at, and some of these stats are a little bit crunched up, so I'll zoom out a little bit. We're looking at the Twin system, and we are looking at just the pitchers. We're going to kind of slim this down to minimum 20 innings, so we get a sample of 29 pitchers. And just kind of looking at some of the leaders, you see Louis Varland leads the system in innings right now. Simeon Woods Richardson pitched tonight, so he's right up there. So these are kind of the guys that are pitching the most. Just going to point that out just because that is such a big factor in, the development of starting pitchers. You got to be pitching innings or else, you might get shifted over to the bullpen. Steve Hadger is just striking everybody out with Fort Myers right now. It's a bit of a surprise to me that he started in Fort Myers and Cade Povich was in Cedar Rapids because Hadger was actually drafted higher than Povich. but that's neither here nor there. Hadra's walking a lot of guys, so that seems fine. So 15.43 K per 9, but a 6.17 walk per 9, which is the highest. So he's just the most extreme on these two stats. Interesting. We'll get to a stat I like a little bit better than this, but Austin Schulfer, who I showed some highlights of in last night's recap, leads the system in strikeout to walk ratio. Down near the bottom, we'll see, this is alarming to see. Ronnie Henriquez is going to be at the bottom of a lot of these lists. Actually, unfortunately, Jordan Palazzolo going to make this sample because I set it too high. Let's set it to 10 innings. Whatever. We're going to get some weird stuff popping up since we set it so low. But whatever. Oh, I should mention we had Chris Valamont got claimed. He was removed from the 40-man roster, DFA'd, and was claimed today. So that was kind of a big transaction that went down. But strikeout percentage, again, we have Steve Hadra. Matthew Swain, who's been basically perfect. He has a 0.00 ERA. He's a reliever for Fort Myers. Also striking out nearly 40% of the batters he's faced. We get some other relievers in here, but David Festa, who's kind of been the pop-up prospect, got promoted to Fort Myers. Finally got to show some highlights of him. Way up there. He's throwing like 98 miles per hour. Insane. Lowest walk percentage among starters is Mike Paredes, who started for Fort Myers tonight. Travis Adams also way down there. You see Austin Schulfer, again, who's been just amazing out of the bullpen. Sawyer Gibson long under 5%. That's just nothing. Very impressive out of these guys. And this is one of my favorite stats right here. Strikeout minus walk percentage. I love this stat. I think this is really telling. You just take their K percentage minus their walk percentage. If you're doing good in this stat, you're going to be probably doing really well in everything else. And David Festa, you see there among the guys with at least 20 innings right around the top. Just an incredible 13th round pick, and he's one of the top performers. Kadewich, who pitched tonight, struck out 9 batters, also very high here. Kind of looking at the negative side, as we kind of did for the hitters, you see Chris Valamont. I don't know that I've seen a negative. He was walking more than he was striking out. A bit surprised he got claimed, but not too heartbroken over it. This was a guy who was kind of a bonus in the trade that originally brought Sergio Romo over from the Marlins. Valamont came over in that trade. Interesting. So you see some guys who are struggling, and then Jordan Balazovic. It's only 7 2/3 innings. But 15.4 strikeout percentage is real bad. A 10.8 walk percentage is real bad. So it's not just like, there's some, obviously a 442 BABIP is, so there are some weird things where you can maybe brush off and say, they're going to get better. But that's one of the things I like about K minus walk percentage. Yeah, this should certainly get better. I don't want to make it sound like these are going to be sustainable, but it's not good. It's not a good look. It's not a good look for Ronnie Henriquez either. So bummed out that those two guys in AAA are not pitching well. But kind of shifting focus back to the low whip guys. Again, you see Swain and Schulfer just dominating. Bradley Hanner's also been really good out of the bullpen for Cedar Rapids. But again, David Festa among the guys, who've been throwing more than 20 innings, very high. Travis Adams, Brent Hedrick as well. A lot of the names that we've been highlighting on the highlights, the nightly recap. So should be pretty familiar names. But Yennier Cano is obviously up with the Twins. He was pitching extremely well along with Swain, the only two guys who had a 0 ERA. Schulfer right behind them. Hanner. John Wilson, I don't think I've shared the highlights of, he's in, pardon me. I'm sure that was great to listen to. I just kicked my microphone. That's the thing with unedited live streams. You get that fun stuff. Sorry about that. But then Evan Sisk was the other guy, so I highlighted him and Schulfer last night regarding Wichita's bullpen. I'm really intrigued by him. Side-arming lefty. Nasty. So that's kind of some of the pitching stats. All right. So let's jump back. I want to make sure to get back into the chat. Yeah, Josiah. Kind of nailed it on the head there. What's with the pitching prospects going to St. Paul and having a 5 ERA? Great question. I'm not sure. Not sure, but it's at least it's smaller samples on those guys, especially Balazovic. Hopefully they can identify some stuff. But, Jordan didn't put up outstanding numbers last year. His whip was real bad for Wichita last year, so it's definitely a concern that Balazovic's not pitching well. Thoughts on newcomers to the Twins, Royce Lewis and Jose Miranda. Royce Lewis I talked about a lot, especially him coming up and then going back down. I did separate videos for both of those. Tremendous. It's been early. The guy hasn't played in 2 years, so I'm supportive of the idea to put him back in AAA and to find him a path where he and Carlos Correa can coexist on this roster and get him comfortable in the minor leagues before pushing him. You don't want to take your crown jewel of your system. You can push guys like Luis Arraez into unfamiliar situations and maybe not feel like you're gonna. It could be a job-altering decision. How they handle Royce Lewis could be a job-altering decision for this front office. I'll just put it that way. Everything's going great in Twins territory. I'm not saying their jobs are on the line. Jim Pohlad gave them an A+ after they finished in last place last year. So I'm pretty sure they're basically untouchable. But you don't want to screw up your former number 1 overall pick. And, it's not like Nick Gordon, who they're obviously playing in a bunch of different positions. He's out of options. You can't even send him down. You can't send him down. So it's a bit of a different situation. I understand people just want to see Royce on the Twins. I get that. I love seeing Royce too. One of the most positive stories of the year, even with the Twins playing so well, is just Royce is healthy and looking incredibly good, and just love that. So very excited for Royce Lewis and his future. Jose Miranda, clearly it's been a struggle. I should bring up something I shared on Twitter not long ago. I think he's a bit in his head. I think the game's a little bit too quick for him. I think he's overthinking his plate appearances. I don't know if that's coming from the coaching staff and kind of instruction that he's been giving, or if he's sort of in his head of like, okay, I'm in the major leagues now. This is the kind of hitter I need to be now that I'm in the majors. But he's not as aggressive to me, I feel like. And I looked it up because I wanted to figure out what this is at. Let's just, is that a circumstantial thing in my head just from kind of stuff from the past that I'm not considering. And I looked it up, and I'll share this here. And we're only talking about home runs in this stat that I'm going to share. So it's not like I have all the data on all of his first pitch swinging metrics from the minor leagues last year. But Jose Miranda hit 30 home runs in the minor leagues last year between AA and AAA. 10 of those 30 home runs were hit on the first pitch of an at-bat. 10 of his 30 home runs on the first pitch, and 15 of 30 were on the first strike of an at-bat. So half of his home runs were hit on the first strike of an at-bat in the minor league last year. I think, we're going to talk about Byron Buxton, and I think there was a time in his career when he was transitioning from the minors to the majors in which Byron was kind of thinking like, okay, I have to take some pitches. I have to see these pitchers. I have to make them work. And that just didn't work for him. It's if you can do that, great. That's valuable. Absolutely. 100%. If you can do that, do it. But some guys are just better at ambushing pitchers, hitting good pitches early in counts. And Byron's really kind of adjusted to that more of being more aggressive. You see him working some longer plate appearances these days. Obviously, he's in a bit of a slump right now. But Miranda, I feel like I know his first pitch swing percentage is below league average right now for major leaguers. And again, I don't know if that's just him not as aggressive, not feeling as comfortable. Again, maybe feeling like he wants to see some of these pitchers he's never seen, or if it's something the Twins told him of, hey, we don't want you to swing at the first strikes as often. But I would like him to be more aggressive because obviously, he really he was a completely different hitter than he'd been in the minor leagues last year. And I think some of it is because he was aggressive on first pitches, or at least first strikes, first competitive pitches. Obviously, if a first pitch is 2 feet out of the zone, he's not going to swing at it. But yeah, I think, that's something to keep in mind regarding anybody, but regarding Miranda in particular, and then just sort of the general overall young guys Sometimes a young guy can come up and look clueless, and then a year later look like a completely different guy without even much, development happening in between. Perfect examples, Alberto Celestino. And the weirdest thing about Celestino was he was such a good defensive outfielder throughout his whole minor league career. He even looked lost in the outfield last year, which was weird. You'd figure, speed and defense aren't the things that are going to slump or, look out of whack at the major league level. And he just looked unrecognizable, Alberto Celestino. I didn't expect him to hit with the Twins, but completely did not recognize him in the field. Looked like a completely different person. And then now we're seeing this year, he's hitting and he's playing great defense, Celestino. So, I think Miranda does need to go back down. I would, once Kirilloff is eligible to come off the injured list, I would bring him up and have him mixing in at first base, DH, left field, and I would have Miranda go back down to get him kind of rolling again and a bit out of his head. I think that's a bit of what's happened at this point as well. But if you're trying to put those situations together, and this was part of one of my main points in my Royce Lewis video I had, was I don't think their situations were related. Royce Lewis was only playing shortstop this year. So once Carlos Correa came back, that position was obviously no longer available. Miranda's been playing third and first with the Twins. Those are positions that are available and that Royce Lewis doesn't have really much experience. No experience at first, hardly any experience at third, and it was from November of 2019. So way in the past at that point. Now he's been starting some games in St. Paul there. So they're kind of opening that opportunity up for him. But if you're wondering my thoughts on why Lewis went down and Miranda stayed, that would be why. But now I do think Miranda should go down and kind of rebuild some momentum down in AAA now. He doesn't really necessarily have anything to prove in AAA. I wouldn't say that. But it's just sort of a, hey, let's just get you out of here, get you down to AAA, playing every day still. But maybe we can kind of process what happened up there and work on some stuff down here to get you ready to go back up and be successful. What positions do I think the Twins need to fill? All pitching. The thing about Royce being, such a great athlete and being flexible is that he can be now a sort of break glass in case of emergency option at so many positions. And the lineup is looking pretty good anyway. And, that was all the expectation in the offseason was that this team should have a good lineup. The pitching is a question. Well, the pitching's been actually very good. Well, I would say the pitching has performed over its head. But on paper, especially now that there's been some injuries, some guys come out. Obviously, some of the young guys have shown themselves to be more capable than we were maybe expecting. So that's been great. But I'm still pretty insecure about the team's pitching staff. I would focus all of their efforts there, really. Russ, I don't think you could get Russell Martin. I'm guessing that's supposed to say Austin Martin. Former catcher Russell Martin. Austin Martin for Montes, I don't think you could do that trade. I don't think Oakland would do that. I don't know why they would. If you think that, a year and a half of Jose Barrios cost Austin Martin and Simeon Woods Richardson, why would a year and a half of Frankie Montas cost less than that? I think you'd have to at least start at Martin and Woods Richardson. But I would say in Austin Martin's case in particular, I might be alone on this. I've always been a little bit lower on him. Not saying that I don't like Austin Martin, but I've always been a little bit lower on him than everybody else. But I think his prospect stock, his trade value has gone down, if anything, this year. So I don't think that would be enough for Montas. But I think, he's still a great trade target. I think the Twins should be trying to get him. Yeah, this is, that was much more common. Edric points out that Johan was in the bullpen. It might have been, I think it was more than a year. Or am I thinking of Liriano? I think it was Johan that was more than a year. Liriano was a little less time, but Francisco Liriano also started in the bullpen. That's something that was a little bit more common, back, a few years back. So I should show off. I got all my fun twin stuff back here. This is one of my new additions. The Santana for Cy Young button. Yeah, that was something that was a little bit more common in the past, but there are some guys still that are transitioning from the bullpen to the rotation these days. Jordan Hicks of the Cardinals comes to mind. I know there are some other ones that I'm not thinking of. Ranger Suarez did it during the year last year for the Phillies, which was kind of weird. There's others. So, yeah, I think Duran this year, I think it's, he's definitely in the bullpen. Beyond that, who knows? I wouldn't say, this is what he is forever. If that's the case, I mean, you're not going to complain about that either. Having a bullpen ace, that's a pretty good outcome. But yeah, I don't think there's any reason why they couldn't potentially try him out there. Gabriel also asked, and again, I think this year, I would consider him strictly in the bullpen. And I think, we should be happy if he gets through this entire season healthy in the bullpen even. Because, breaking camp with the opening day roster, it could be, we're talking about maybe 70 innings he's going to pitch, which is already a pretty big jump from the 20 whatever he threw last year. So I don't think we're talking about Duran, stretching out potentially late this year. Unless something really disastrous happens with the Twins. But in the future, it doesn't mean that that's forever is what I would say. Yeah, I think he'll be there this year. Byron hit the crap out of the ball today. He just, his one, I don't know if they scored that an error or a hit in the 10th inning, but the one time he did reach base was on an infield single or an error. I'm not sure. I didn't look up the scoring yet, but he hit the crap out of the ball. Sometimes the balls don't fall in. That's kind of the one thing about him and his kind of style of player. They talked about Javier Baez in that manner on the broadcast a bit. If you don't really work plate appearances, if you don't draw walks, it can be kind of peaks and valleys. You're really BABIP dependent, and when you hit the ball as hard as Byron, and you're as fast as Byron, you're going to be doing pretty well. But there's going to be those valleys where it just seems like nothing's falling in. Everybody's catching everything. You're not hitting as many home runs. And Douglas says that's just baseball. Yeah, that's kind of my take at this point. It's just baseball. I'm not too worried about Buxton. Douglas says Miranda can stay. It's good. Certainly getting some valuable time, and it's nice that him struggling. And I know he had a 2-hit game recently, but his struggles really haven't, slowed the team down that much. Same thing you can say about Buxton's slump here. That's really the mark of a really good team, and I think a reason to be more optimistic about the Twins is it's not like they've needed everything to be clicking and rolling at the same time to be going on these big streaks. We'd like to see them play better against some of the better teams that they've played. That Astro series was a little bit of a letdown, but a lot of good stuff going on. Do you think Miranda and Lewis should play at different levels? No, I don't see why they would be in competition with each other. Again, they play completely different positions. I guess Royce is playing a bit of third base now, but I don't think you would need them at different levels necessarily. Why do you love Rocco so much? I don't love Rocco. I think managerial people put the amount of value people prescribe to managers is 500 times more than it actually is. The players play the game. Managers all do a lot of the same stuff at the major league level. So many things that are second guessed are, very silly. There's a lot of decisions you can make that if it might work out, it might not work out, but it doesn't mean that it was a bad decision. There's a lot of things that aren't taken into account when people think a manager makes a bad decision. I don't spend hardly any time talking about Rocco, so I don't know why anybody thinks I love Rocco so much. If the Twins fired Rocco tomorrow, I wouldn't go on some kind of rant that there was some kind of tomorrow's a bit of an exaggeration. Let's say they fired Rocco at the end of last season. I wouldn't have really batted an eye. I don't think managers make nearly as big of a difference as anybody thinks they do. I don't think Rocco's great. I don't think Rocco's terrible. I think he's somewhere around the middle. I think he's good at managing to the 162 game season, which can be kind of infuriating if you're living and dying with every win and loss. But I don't love Rocco that much. He seems like a good dude. I think he's good. He's good at managing to the 162 game season. Whether that's your thing or not, that's whatever. Again, I don't think, if you replaced him tomorrow with whoever, I don't want to say Jay Stinkler. I know he's the bench coach, but he lost the Padres clubhouse last year, so let's not use him as an example. AJ Hinch. Okay, let's do that. AJ Hinch is with the Tigers. The Tigers are terrible again. They were supposed to be better because they added a bunch of pieces, but they're terrible. Does that mean AJ Hinch is a terrible manager? No, I think you could probably flip-flop AJ Hinch and Rocco Baldelli and probably not have any more of a different outcome that these two teams have had going on so far this season. I guess that's maybe the best place I can say my take on managers. Under Rocco, but no pitcher ever. How many guys do you think threw 200 innings? That's the other thing too about talking about Rocco and everybody else. The Twins don't do anything that's all that much different than a lot of the other teams in Major League Baseball. If you are not paying as much attention to the other teams, I don't either. I don't blame you. And you're thinking about maybe previous years' Twins teams. You can kind of get a little clouded in that. But let's look at last year. How many pitchers threw 200 innings across all of Major League Baseball last year? Freaking 4. Zach Wheeler, Walker Buehler, Adam Wainwright, and Sandy Alcantara. So, yeah, I would agree. Under Rocco, I bet no Twins pitcher ever pitches 200 innings again because there's only 4 guys that threw 200 innings last year. So if it seems like I love Rocco, it's basically because every argument I ever hear that's anti-Rocco is really more anti-2022 baseball. And that's fine. If you don't like the way teams are managing things, you disagree with it, I can't really disagree with you. There's a lot of things about the style of current baseball, Major League Baseball, that I don't like too. But you can't just say that that's Rocco. If you could take pretty much any other manager out there and you're going to get something that looks very similar to what we're getting out of the Minnesota Twins as they're being managed right now. That's my main point I'm trying to make. And if you don't like Rocco, that's fine. That's fine. If you don't like the way he manages, fine. I don't care. I'm not telling you you're wrong on that. But I will say most of the things that I see get pointed out are either things that are just that's the way teams are managed for the most part, or a lot of the stuff with bullpen usage is like, well, what else is he supposed to do? Like if you want to rip his bullpen usage today, which some of those decisions didn't work out. Like, well, look at the bullpen. Like this is not, I know the Twins bullpen has performed pretty well, but this is not a good, if you look at this bullpen on paper compared to some other ones, this is not a good bullpen. I don't envy anybody who's trying to manage this bullpen. So I guess I'm a little bit more lenient toward, saying again, the players got to play. If you don't have a good bullpen, it's hard to manage a good bullpen. And I think he's done a pretty good job with that. Thanks, Caleb. Sorry to go on a rant there, but I haven't talked about Rocco, I don't think, on the channel. So I had lots of things to say, I guess. I didn't know. That's kind of one of the fun things about these live streams. I get to talk about some topics that aren't usually discussed on the, nightly recaps. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. They could use Duran as an opener in a playoff series. Speaking of managing, the playoffs are managed so weird these days. That I wouldn't put anything past him. Do I think Donaldson was bringing the clubhouse down? That certainly kind of seems to be part of what the situation was. I don't think you could. It would be tough to sort of pin everything on one player. But he's gone. There's some new guys in. Maybe some of the other guys that left too are part of the problem. It's very hard to say on the outside looking in, but you could very easily see how Josh Donaldson might not be everybody's cup of tea, might rub certain guys the wrong way, might not be the easiest guy to get along with. Definitely. I would agree with this. Thank you, Stephen, for putting this out there, because I would say this as well. Rocco is good manager of the players, but maybe his in-game expertise isn't the best. Again, I think some of that is a little bit hard to nitpick sometimes because of the personnel he has, particularly in the bullpen. The Twins, like we said with Taylor Rogers getting traded, this front office doesn't like to invest money in bullpens. I don't necessarily disagree with that, but you end up with these bullpens where it's like, oh man, how are we going to, you never really know how it's going to evolve. And it's always kind of like a picture developing all the time. And certain guys are pitching well and then not, or hurt and then in and out. It's so much easier for like Tony La Russa to manage the White Sox bullpen when you have, like Liam Hendricks in the end game and all these other big money established guys. Where you just paint by numbers. And it's like, yeah, you're the 9th inning guy, you're the 8th inning guy, you're the 7th inning guy, you're the lefty guy. It's much more difficult to do that. So I think Rocco is being asked a lot in terms of his bullpen management in particular. But yeah, managing of the players, that I think, we could nitpick Rocco and say, well, if the clubhouse was bad last year because of Donaldson, like why could Rocco not solve that problem? If that's been such a big turnaround from 2021 to 2022, a big part of that is certainly the players, but the manager has an influence on that, certainly. But Rocco does seem to keep the guys comfortable. It seems like he's really good about sort of putting expectations out there. I understand a lot of people think he's a little bit too soft on guys in terms of like rest and all those things. But again, I think he is very good at managing to the 162 game season, which is like hard to comprehend, even if you're like a hardcore baseball fan. The season's just so long, so many games. And I could see where all those things kind of rub people the wrong way. Because when you're a fan and you're kind of living and dying on every game, and your manager is not really putting the vibes out there that he's really, managing to death every, and putting the best team out there every single game, and maybe holding some guys back and keeping guys fresh, that can be frustrating. So yeah, I think it was, just fine. I don't love him. I don't think he's keeping this team down. I just think it's really talked about a lot more than it maybe is worthy, is my point there. But I got to get going because I got to start working on finishing up tonight's system recap. So be on the lookout for that. That'll be up before too long. Thanks for stopping by. It was really good to get in a live stream. It's been really tough for me to try to get to. I think it's been a month. Since we've done one of these. He was doing these consistently every week over the off season and then a bit into the season. But, things get busier in the summertime. At the end of the month, I've got I do have a day job, so I work 40 hours a week. Plus that sometimes, depending on busy times, and I have a family too. So I've got a 5-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old son, so things get a little busy. So that's kind of part of the motivation of trying to sort of play around with the system recaps, is find ways I can streamline some things in those without, taking information out. So I can just save some more time, so I can maybe get to more of this stuff, or just have some more flexibility outside of that. But I love doing them. I don't want to make it sound like they're a chore. That's why I do them almost every night. I have a blast doing them. I have a lot of fun, and I really appreciate how supportive everybody is in the audience, and that really keeps me going too. So, and making some side money on YouTube talking about baseball has really been a cool thing and very nice. Definitely helps out. I'm never going to be replacing my main income. Never, not anywhere close to that. Never. That's not what I'm aiming to do. I'm having a really good time doing this. I don't really have any aspirations beyond that. And just having fun and trying to make the best videos that I can in the time I can. Usually takes me like 80 minutes or so. to put together these 4 or 5 minute videos on the system recaps. It seems so. That's probably how long have we been live streaming? An hour. So over this whole live stream, more than that, to put together a 5 minute. I can live stream for an hour, or I can make a 5 minute video. It's sort of the get to give you an idea how much work gets crunched into those. But again, I love doing them. And as long as I'm having fun, they're going to keep coming. But again, I'm going to kind of play around with them to try to make sure I can fit some other stuff in, try to keep me fresh and not burning out, give you guys some other stuff to look at and maybe see if you like them, and just to work some other stuff in. So I appreciate all of y'all missing the hills. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You guys always have a lot of, again, I said this earlier in the stream, I feel really fortunate to have such a kind and supportive audience that will, let me try around with some stuff without overreacting and let me go on rants about Rocco Baldelli and how I don't love him and not get too upset if I kind of shoot down some ideas. I know there was one earlier this week I went on a little rant about as well, which I kind of regretted that one. So always, you might catch me at a bad time every once in a while. That's all I'm saying. If some of you might have seen that one where I got a little upset. Somebody was freaking out after, I think it was the game 5 of the win streak or whatever. And I was like, I don't know what you could be mad about right now. Nitpicking, there's a lot of negativity from the Royce Lewis return and getting sent back down and the Byron Buxton load management stuff there for a minute. That caught me a little bit. That hooked me. I got a little triggered by that, to be honest. But, we're passionate about the Twins. We're passionate about baseball. We're passionate about the team. Every once in a while it's going to happen. I won't hold it against you if you rant on me, and I hope the same is true. So luckily we don't have a lot to be too upset about with the Twins playing as well as they are. But again, I'm going to dip out and get to work on that recap. We'll talk again soon.